So today we are going to be looking at props, and what we have here is a React framework, and we are just going to be setting it up and creating a component folder. And basically, just to let you know what props, the full meaning of props is properties, and what that enables us to do in React is to pass components, to pass data from a parent component to a child component. And here we are just going to be importing React from React. And also, they also enable the flow of information between React components, so thereby allowing for dynamic and reusable code. So here we are just going to be creating a function, and we actually want to create a function called blog. So in this component, we want to create a title for a blog, and we also want our blog to have a category, and we'll also want to check if the blog post has been posted. So that's what we are just going to create in this component. So the first things first is we actually want to put that in a div, and the next thing we want to do is create an h2 tag or an h2 element, and then we can just give that and call that title. And how we pass in our props is by, we just add that to our parentheses. And then we can come back to our curly braces and use props. And then because we want to give it a title, so we can call in, we can actually call that props dot title. And then the next we want to have, we can have that in a paragraph element, and we want that to be the category. So we would just use our curly braces and pass props dot category. We also want to find out if our post has been published. So we are going to put that in a paragraph element, and for this published, I want to make it a Boolean data type. So we're just going to have published, and just so you know, it's going to just be a yes or a no type of data. So we want to say if our post has been published or if it hasn't been published. And so we're just going to have props dot is published. And also we want to put that in a ternary. And then we can make use of our string literal. And then we can put that as yes and or no. So this component has actually now provided the attributes for that we are going to make use in our parent component. We have a bit of error there, spelled the default wrong, so I'm just going to correct that, and it's default. Okay, so now our blog component is ready for us to use in our parent component. So since we know that we can actually make use of props in our parent component, and we can actually pass different values in our parent component, we are going to be using our blog component, which is the child component, and we're going to be passing values there. So what we have now is the blog component, and then we are going to set our title, and we are going to give our title artificial intelligence. And we also want to set our category to technology. And then we had used a Boolean data type, so we are just going to set is published to true. So let's save that and let's go back. Oops, there seems to be an error. It says blog is not defined. And we're just going to go back there and import our blog. So we need to import blog.js from components. And let's go back and refresh so we can see that we have artificial intelligence, we have category, and we have is published. So we go back to our index.css and we want to style our web page. So we are just going to create a class called blog. And in that blog, we want to style, we want to give it a font family, a font style, a font size, a padding, and a border. So we're just going to give it a font size and we just want that to be normal, a font style to be normal. And then we have a font size and we just want to give that something around 1.5. And we also want our padding to be 10px. And we also want to give it a border of something around 1px. And we can make that solid. And, well, let's change the color from black. Let's make it something a bit brighter, maybe grayish. Grayish, something close to, yeah, that works. Okay, so now we have created a styling for our blog. So we are just going to go to our div class and add that into our div, and we can just give that blog, and we can see that we have created the styling for this blog post. So we want to go back to our parent component, which is our app.js, and we want to add more dynamic data. So because we have because we're making use of our props, we can add as many dynamic data to our parent component. So here we are just going to add more data to this component. And so we are going to give it a title as well. I'm going to give that a title. And we are going to call that, let's call it, so we're going to call it What's the Hype About Artificial Intelligence? Just because I'm all about artificial intelligence right now. But that's what we are going to call this blog title. And we also want to give it a category. And we want this to be in a category called Tech Gist. Technology Gist. And so the next thing we want to find out is if this blog post has been published. So we want to set that to false just to see how the props works. So we're going to save that and refresh, and we can see our title and our category. But we can also notice that our category isn't actually showing the data that we had set it in our parent component. So we're just going to go back to the child component and check for errors, and we can see that props.category was spelled wrongly. So that is one of the reasons for why that was not showing. And when we refreshed, we can actually see that the category shows now on our web page. So we're just going to go back to our parent component, and then we're going to add more dynamic data, because remember, this tutorial is all about props. So just understanding how passing data from our child component to our parent component and just assessing props through the child component works. So we're actually going to pass another title, and this time we're just going to call it virtual reality, one of my favorite technology topics. So we are going to give it a category, and for this category, we are just going to give it tech gist again. And then we also want to find out if it's published. So is this published? And then we can pass in true or false, but we are going to pass in false, and we want to add more data, and just going to use the same child components. And just so you know, this is how we actually use props to pass data from different components to the parent component. So different child components. So let's say, for example, we had another component, we could actually use that component in here, passing with the use of props. So here we are just going to give it a title called React Framework, and it's going to be under the category of programming. And we also want to find out if it is published. And then we are going to pass in true, it's been published. And we can actually save this. And when we refresh, we can see all of our dynamic data that we actually used in our parent component. We can actually see that on our webpage. So there's also something else that I would like to also share as well. There is something called default props. So how this works is that when you want to make use of, basically you don't want to pass in any dynamic data in the parent component, we could actually make use of default props. And how you do that is just using the default props method, and you just call in block.default props, and then you actually give it a title. So what this allows you to is set the attributes that you want to display on the web page. So you can actually set the attributes here in the child component. So we are just going to pass a title here, and we'll pass the title, and we can give that AI evolution, and we have the category, and we can also set that to tech gist. And we also want to pass in, we also want to find out if this post has also been published. So this is another way of actually making use of props. So what we've achieved is actually used the default props method and used it to pass the data dynamically. So now if we were to use this in the parent component, what we would do is that we would just go into our app.js, and then we can just scroll down and simply call in our child component, which is blog, and we just call that, and we save it. And if we refresh, we can see AI evolution and the tech gist and publish to know. So this is another way that props is can actually be used within components. But we can also, with the default props method, we can also change that data. So if we decide that, we want something else to sort of like override that data, we can actually change that, and we can have that set the title to blockchain technology, and we can also give it another category, and we can set the category to this one, we can just call it technology, because it's actually technology. And then we want is published. We want to pass in, we want to say true for this one. And if we save and we refresh, go back to a web page, so we see that that has also been changed. So that's another great way to actually make use of the default props method. And we can also see the technology has been changed. And thank you for watching.